You are smart enough to know better. That is exactly why the scam works on you. Somewhere out there right now, a person with a graduate degree, a six-figure salary, and a reputation for being sharp is wiring money to a stranger, convinced they are helping a government agent, rescuing a stranded relative, or securing a once-in-a-lifetime investment. Later, when it unravels, everyone around them asks the same question. How could someone that smart fall for something that obvious? But that question contains a hidden assumption, and the assumption is wrong. It assumes intelligence is a shield against manipulation. It is not. In some cases, it is the opposite. Here's the uncomfortable truth your brain does not want you to sit with. Intelligence measures how well you process information you know you need to process. It says almost nothing about how well you detect the moments when you are being deliberately steered, especially by someone who understands psychology better than you understand yourself in that instant. Being good at solving problems does not automatically make you good at noticing when you are inside someone else's problem, one they designed specifically to be solved incorrectly by you on purpose. To understand why intelligent, careful, successful people are frequently the ones who lose the most to fraud, you need to understand what a scam actually is at a structural level. A scam is not a test of intelligence. It is an engineered hijack of automatic decision-making. Every human brain runs on two different systems of thought, a distinction made famous by psychologist Daniel Kahneman. One system is fast, intuitive, automatic, and runs constantly in the background without effort. The other is slow, deliberate, analytical, and only switches on when you consciously engage it. Kahneman's research, built over decades and eventually earning him a Nobel Prize, demonstrated that the fast system handles the vast majority of your daily decisions, and it is remarkably good at pattern matching under normal circumstances. But it is also exploitable because it relies on shortcuts, and shortcuts can be reverse engineered by anyone who studies them closely enough. A well-constructed scam is not trying to defeat your slow, careful, analytical thinking. It is specifically designed to never let that system turn on in the first place. And this is where the deep dive gets genuinely disturbing, because the exact techniques used to bypass careful thinking were documented decades ago by psychologist Robert Cialdini, and they were not discovered by studying con artists in isolation. Cialdini spent years training as a salesperson, a fundraiser, and an apprentice to persuasion professionals, specifically to catalog which psychological levers reliably override rational evaluation. He identified a small set of triggers, including urgency, authority, social proof, and reciprocity, that activate almost automatically once triggered, regardless of how intelligent the target is. Urgency works by removing the one resource your slow thinking system actually needs to function, which is time. Authority works because your brain is wired from childhood to defer to perceived expert status rather than independently verify every claim from scratch. Social proof works because your brain treats what other people appear to be doing as strong evidence for what is safe or correct. None of these triggers ask you to be foolish. They ask you to do what your brain does by default, which is rely on fast, efficient shortcuts instead of running a full analysis on every single interaction of your day. A scam artist who understands this does not need to lie to a smart person about facts. They only need to construct a situation where the smart person's fast system fires before the slow system gets invited to the conversation at all. This connects to a counterintuitive finding from psychologist Stacey Wood and her colleagues, who researched cognitive and psychological predictors of fraud vulnerability. Their work found that general intelligence and education level were poor predictors of who fell for scams. What mattered far more were situational and psychological factors at the moment of decision, including social isolation, time pressure, and how much someone trusted their own snap judgment. In some of Wood's research, higher confidence in one's own decision-making, a trait strongly associated with intelligent and successful people, actually correlated with increased vulnerability in certain scam scenarios, not decreased vulnerability. This directly echoes work by psychologist David Dunning, whose research on overconfidence revealed that competent, high-performing individuals often extend their justified confidence in one domain into unjustified confidence in unrelated domains, including their ability to spot manipulation in real time. The very trait that makes someone excellent at their job, trusting their own rapid judgment, can become the exact vulnerability a scammer needs, because a person who believes they cannot be fooled stops running the internal checks that would normally catch the fraud. Here's the twist that flips the entire narrative people tell about scam victims. The people most likely to be targeted by sophisticated scams are frequently not the naive or uneducated. They are often successful, financially secure, socially trusting, and mentally sharp, because those traits make them valuable targets and simultaneously make them believe they are immune. The scammers running long-form investment fraud specifically seek out intelligent, financially literate victims because intelligent victims have more money to lose, and because their confidence in their own judgment makes them slower to seek a second opinion once the scam begins unfolding. A less confident person might show the suspicious email to a friend out of uncertainty. A highly confident, highly intelligent person often skips that step entirely, precisely because they trust their own analysis more. Consider how this plays out in a real, well-documented category of fraud: the romance scam or long con investment scheme that unfolds over weeks or months rather than minutes. These scams do not rely on a single moment of pressure. They rely on a slow, patient construction of trust using consistent communication, apparent vulnerability shared by the scammer, and gradual escalation of financial requests that never spike suddenly enough to trigger alarm. Each individual step feels reasonable in isolation because the scammer has engineered the situation so that the victim's slow, analytical thinking is never asked to evaluate the entire relationship at once. It is only ever asked to evaluate the next small, plausible step. This is precisely the mechanism Cialdini described with commitment and consistency, another core persuasion principle, where a person who has already taken several small, consistent actions feels psychological pressure to remain consistent with their previous choices, even as the total picture becomes increasingly implausible. Intelligent victims are often better, not worse, at rationalizing that consistency because they are more skilled at constructing coherent narratives that justify their prior decisions. So what does this actually mean for you? Someone who almost certainly considers yourself reasonably sharp and reasonably careful. And it means the moment you feel completely certain you could never fall for a scam is the exact moment you have stopped running the checks that would prevent one. Confidence is not protection. Awareness of your own exploitability is protection. The practical shift here is not to become paranoid about every interaction, but to build one specific habit, treating urgency and isolation as red flags in themselves and separate from whatever story accompanies them. Any situation that asks you to decide quickly alone, without discussing it with someone you trust, deserves suspicion regardless of how credible the source appears, regardless of how many boxes it checks, and regardless of how confident you feel in the moment. Real threats to your finances and safety rarely require you to skip the step of talking it through with another person. Genuine opportunities can survive a pause. Scams cannot. You are smart enough to know better, and that confidence is exactly the resource a well-designed scam is built to use against you. The people who lose the most are rarely the ones who lack intelligence. They are often the ones who trusted their intelligence to do a job it was never built for, catching manipulation in real time, alone, under pressure, without a second opinion. Now you know why.